지금이 9.
It is 9 o'clock, but I think we need to wait for some more people, so we will begin at 9:10.
Ladies and gentlemen, and then we are planned to lead the forum at 9 o'clock, but not yet. Many people join us, so we'll start at 9:10 exactly. Thank you. 아니 비어가지고 지금 좀 있으면 수상식을 해야 되는데 그래서 지금 제가 10분 늦추고 있는 건데
저희는 지금 아무도 연락처를 몰라요.
글쎄 뭐 나도 전혀 모르네. 그 관여를 안 해가지고.
그러니까 저도 관여를 안 하고 저는 이제 수상자가 이렇게 왔다라고만 관여를 했지. 뭐 시상이 기업도 아무것도 모르는데 지금 이상.
나도 완전 박상천 교수가 연락 온 건데 너무 많이 안 와가지고 시상식 할 수 있겠네.
앉아 계시는 분만 제가 동그라미 해줄까요?
아니 그거 불러서 없으면 뭐 있는 대로만 하면 되는 거.
위원장님은 알고 계세요?
세계가 없네. 저쪽에는 좀 온 것 같은데. 저쪽도 수상기업 아닌데 저기는.
저 끝에는 수상기업이세요. 끝에 쪽은 수상기업이고 그 다음에 수상기업이 저기도 좀 있고 여기는 아무도 안 하네.
여기 좀 안 왔는데. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to inform you, you can use this receiver. Channel 1 for Korean and channel 2 in English. So please use this receiver for the better understanding. I will preside this forum in Korean for the Korean attendees. 안녕하십니까? 저는
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Secretary General Park Jong-chan of the EV Forum. It is my great pleasure to meet you at this forum. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce the VIP guests who are with us at this forum. Whenever I introduce each of them, please give a big round of applause. The 11th forum has been prepared by this chairman, Kim Dae-hwan, and the president of the GEAN. Also, the co-organizer of the forum and president of the New Paradigm Institute, Mr. Moon Guk-hyun, is with us today. Mr. Lee Tae-sik, the co-organizer and also the chairman of the Korea Science and Technology Association. Chairman Lofel Hwan of the Philippines Electric Vehicle Association. Mr. Ami Kumaru, Ambassador to Korea. Ms. Sabrina Myeon-son, head of the deputy head of the embassy to Korea. Mr. Frankenstein, planning department chairman of GEAN. To begin with, Mr. Kim Dae-hwan, president of the network, will give us the congratulatory remark.
Sorry that we are beginning the session too early in the morning. The co-chairman, the chairpersons, sorry that we forgot to introduce them. We have one distinct guest. We have a chairman from the Shipping and Engineering Society of Korea. Would you please welcome him with a warm round of applause? Detroit Electric, Albert Ram. Actually, he is one of the important commission members. Thank you for coming. Korea Carbon Industry Chairman and Co-Chairman, Mr. Bach. Thank you for coming too. From far away, ICE Swiss, Fabrella. Actually, she has the subcommittee for standardization. From Malaysia, we have Dennis Che, Chairman. Thank you. He's from the Malaysia EV Association. Now, from the World EV Association, about 9 years ago, Green Resources Forum Chairman, Dr. Kim is here with us. Thank you. From the USA, yesterday, he came with his wife, John Nam. Thank you for coming all the way from the USA. From the Philippines, former Chairman Fred Sainto. Thank you for coming. From Japan, we have. Sorry, I forgot. Okay, we have a representative from Japan. And on the back, we have Chairman Joe Anok. He's a co-chairman. He's a former president of KEPCO. Thank you for being with us. Robot Industry Promotion Agency, Dr. Chong Son, and co-chairman. Thank you. Next to him, Life Cycle Subcommittee Chairman, Dr. Zhou. Thank you. From Tsinghua University Smart Grid Center, leader Hugh. Thank you for coming all the way from China. Here we have one more important guest that I want to introduce to you. Robot Industry Promotion Agency, and he allowed us to endure 4 years, go through 4 years. He's a headquarter member or chairman of the Electric Committee. Thank you. Now I'd like to begin my opening speech. We have gone through 4 or 5 years of COVID-19. I know that we have gone through challenges, and I'm gonna tell you what we should be headed for. Honored guests and distinguished guests, I'd like to extend my warm welcome to Jeju Island, a hub for electric vehicle powered by wind and solar energy. I'm very happy to be meeting with you for this 9th occasion. And I believe that this relationship is of greatest value to us. Above all, I'm energized by the fact that many of you come to Jeju with bright smiles and good health despite the COVID-19 pandemic that threatened the survival of humanity. I'd like to express my sincere thanks to Honorable Amit Kumaro, Ambassador of India to Korea, Joo Hong Kim, Executive Director of Korea Automotive Mobility Industry Association, and Krishna Uttamote, President of Electric Vehicle Association of Thailand, and Juan Rommel, President of EV Association of Philippines, and Albert Lam from Detroit Electric, and Embassy of Denmark. We have Deputy Chief of Mission, Gabriel, and IC Board Member, Eric Stenberg, and Gan Planning Committee, and David Gang Bloomberg, Research Director for Korea and Japan at NEF. The global EV industry is rapidly recovering from COVID-19 pandemic, and supply chain crisis and related industries are revitalizing. Countries around the world, including Korea, are implementing various strategies to accelerate carbon neutralization and develop future growth engine industries. At the center of this is the e-mobility industry, including EV. Europe is one of the fastest moving countries in the world to decarbonize, and while there is some debate about slowing down the transition to electric vehicles, the commitment remains strong. Legislation to significantly increase the carbon reduction target for heavy-duty truck has also been agreed upon. Even in Africa, which is relatively late in e-mobility transition, we are seeing moves to ban internal combustion vehicles. Some countries are even importing electric vehicle components and producing electric buses in their own countries. And some have raised doubt, while some have raised doubt about automotive driving, new safety findings are being published as efforts are made to advance the technology. It's time for us to establish our service as an international organization that leads the development of global EV industry further. And we will develop the activities of our various subcommittees. The number of member countries and member companies is on steady increase. Based on our extensive network, we should remain committed to driving technological advances, regulatory innovations, and market expansion in the EV industry. Jeju Island, as you know, we have 10% of all the vehicles electric vehicle. So Gene Award, 5 organizations, and then IV 2040 Innovative Awards will be given 14 companies, and congratulations and thank you for your hard work. For the future, this year mark the finish or good overcoming a 5-year pandemic COVID. I believe that we are at a time to begin a new journey forward. Last but not least, carbon-free island Kapado has been the starting point, and now we have a green island Jeju, and from Denmark we have a special support from them. Sim Ji-eun, Senior Secretary, he is with us today, and thank you for all your support. With this, I'd like to conclude my opening remark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim, for your good remark. I'd like to invite Mr. Moon Guk-hyun, CEO, to the stage once again for his remark.
Okay. And 그러면 다음에는
Okay, then we will begin the Gene Award without further ado. The 11th International eMobility Expo for the first time prepared the Innovation Award in the name of the Gene Award. So we have some nominees that I want to introduce from now on. The winner of the Technology Innovation Awards. Actually, this award intends to congratulate the nominees whose function and appearance and novelty and commercialization capability of their technology is excellent, and who can also lead the future technology development. We selected 14 nominees. Whenever their names and product names are called, please give a big round of applause to each of them. So this is alphabetical order. DSI. EV-Link. Hana Aerospace. H Energy. Brother Partners. Innovative. Jeju Marine Tech. Carnegie Mobility,
Master
Master Bolt Korea,
Miaslek,
Miaslek,
Heritage,
Harity,
Sohan Innobility,
Sun Innobility,
SPG Korea,
SPG Korea,
Yukon Creative.
Yukon Creative.
Another applause is good for health. Okay, thank you. 수상을 축하드립니다.
Congratulations, all the winners. Next is the winner of the Gene Award. Gene Award intends to recognize the contribution of those who made a huge contribution to the growth of the industry. So we went through the strict nomination procedures, and the following is the nominee of the Gene Award. Danish company, Denpors. From Korea, Hana Aerospace.
한국전자통신연구원,
Korea Electronics and Telecommunication Research Institute.
필리핀 EV
And Philippine Electric Vehicle Association.
금년부터는
From this year,
기여가 많은 중 한 분을
we will select one who had made the greatest contribution to the growth of the association in the name of Gene Achievement Award. And the award goes to
한국로봇산업진흥원
Korea Robot Robot Industry Advancement. Mr. Sonung-이 is the winner. Please give a big round of applause.
이 자리에는 혁신기술사 수상기업의
We are joined by the representatives of the award winners, and for the Gene Award, we will give the award in the opening ceremony.
김대환, 문국현,
Mr. Kim Dae-han, Moon Guk-hyun,
이태식
Lee Tae-sik, the
세 분이 수고했습니다.
co-chairperson of the organizing committee, will give the award. I'd like to invite Mr. Kim Dae-hwan, and he's going to give the prize to five winners of the Innovation Award. Mr. Kang Woo-yeon, who made the Tamla Kingdom on the Jeju Island, made this prize. Private Upcycle ESG Upcycle was a program that made this kind of prize. I'd like to invite Mr. Kim Dae-hwan to the stage, and all the representatives of these companies, please come onto the stage as well. Sohan Innobility, DSI, Brother Partners, Master Bolt Korea, Jeju Marine Tech, please come onto the stage. Please come onto the stage. So we have a bit latecomers, I think. So please sit straight to the camera. So this is a recycled frying pan, and this is a symbol of the Innovation Award. So I think this should be the family legacy for you, because this is such a meaningful work made by the president, and this is one and only work in the world, I think. Sohan Innobility. DSI. Brother Partners. Master Bolt Korea. Jeju Marine Tech. So why don't we take the picture all together? Please come closer here. Please sit right next to the chairman on each side. Thank you so much. Please go back to your seat. Mr. Moon Guk-hyung will be on stage to give the remaining awards to the winners. When your name is called, please come to the stage as well. eMOBILITY, Hana Aerospace, Carnegie Mobility, Yukon Creative, and please come onto stage. So from Innovative, we will give the award.
다음은 한화
Hana Aerospace, Carnegie Mobility, last but not least, Yukon Creative, So let's have another group photo taking. Please come forward a little bit. Chairman, you should sit in the middle.
감사합니다.
Thank you so much. Please go back to your seat. So this is very first award, so it was a little bit unorganized. I ask for your kind understanding. I'd like to invite Mr. Lee Tae-sik to the stage this time. So if your name is called, please come to the stage. H Energy, Parity, Nears Lab, EV Link, SPG Korea. I think we have two missing persons here, but everyone please come.
예. H 에너지신가요?
Are you from H Energy Parity? Where are you from? Okay, Parity. And you're from SPG Korea? Okay. It is time for the group photo taking. That is everything for the award session. Thank you so much. So let us begin the GIN conference, and the first speech will be given by the head of Bloomberg NEF Japan and Korea Research Head, Mr. David Kang is our first presenter, and he's going to talk about the world EV market and future outlook. Please welcome with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Kang, and I manage Japan and Korea research at Bloomberg NEF. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Park and the organizers of Global EV Association Network Forum for this wonderful opportunity to speak today. It's a great honor. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'd like to talk about where we are in decarbonizing the global transport sector and how the different areas across the transport system are gearing up for this race to net zero. So let's begin by taking a look at where we are in the broader energy transition. This is a data set that we at Bloomberg NEF have been gathering now for 20 years, and it shows how much money is flowing into the different sectors in the energy transition. Now, prior to 2018, most of that investment is really in renewable energy, so it's in solar and wind. But right around 2018, something very different happens. There's a huge growth that kicks off in clean transport, and particularly electrified transport. We saw $684 billion spent last year on electrified transport, and it is now the single biggest category of investment in the energy transition. So let's dive deeper into clean transport. The first thing to note is that electric vehicle sales are still rising. Now, you may have heard of market slowdown this year, but it is worth noting that the overall numbers are still rising. There was about 14 million EVs sold last year, and that's battery electric and plug-in hybrid combined. And we think it's going to be around 17 million this year. And that means electric vehicles have hit 20% of all vehicles sold last year. Some markets are even further ahead. China, over 35% of all vehicle sales were electric last year. South Korea is unfortunately lagging behind a bit against its global peers, as you can see here, but we actually expect Korea to catch up quite rapidly in the next decade. On the contrary, combustion vehicle sales have peaked in 2017. We first made this call back in 2018, so 6 years ago, and there was a lot of skepticism around this analysis back then, but we're more and more confident in each year that goes by that there's no momentum for the internal combustion engine to reach those 2017 highs again. They're now down 23% from their peak, and we think it will continue to decline. And what that means is established automakers are losing share in the global auto market. The chart on the left shows the global share of passenger vehicle sales by electric-only automakers. So these are companies like Tesla and BYD. And you can see their share really spiking from 2020 onwards. Now, the chart on the right shows the share of domestic versus international automakers in China market. And we can see how quickly the international automakers that's shown in green over there, they're losing share from 2020 onwards. They're basically being squeezed out by domestic automakers who have more advanced offerings around electric vehicles. And people might say, oh, it's the passenger vehicle segment that things are moving quickly. But if you look at across the vehicle segment, 44% of all two-wheelers sold last year were electric. Buses at 43%, and even commercial vehicles at 2 to 7%. So that's a very positive story. It is worth noting, though, that the rate of growth is slowing. So the number of electric vehicles sold is rising in absolute terms, but the percentage growth is falling. It's gone from 100% growth just a few years ago, and we think it's going to be around 20% this year. Now let's a little bit about charging infrastructure. So this is a charging infrastructure in Shenzhen, China, and it can charge several hundred electric vehicles at the same time. And I think the scale of this is kind of reflective of what we are seeing around the world on charging infrastructure. So last year, we saw 1.2 million new public chargers added around the world. And this year, we think there will be around 1.6 million new public chargers added. Now, there's an interesting dynamic emerging around who's operating these chargers. So the blue line shows the number of chargers owned by Tesla in Europe, arguably one of the most important charging networks out there. The purple line shows the next 5 biggest operators all combined. And we can see it's quickly catching up with Tesla in Europe. But the most important dynamic is the long tail of all the other 500 smaller charging companies that are now operating 4 times as much chargers than Tesla. So there's a lot of these chargers being built, and it's important that a lot of them are being built because the public charging infrastructure is being used more than we expected. When you talk about EV charging, there's often this narrative that 95% of charging will be done at home. So that's the number that gets thrown around, 95%. But the data that we are seeing doesn't suggest that. So if you look at Tesla drivers, they do about 28% of their charging at Tesla superchargers. And you might say, well, the supercharger network was free and low cost for many of them, so that's why it's so high. But if you look at the Netherlands, there's a lot of slow public chargers in the Netherlands, but more than 1/3 of the total charging is still done in public. If you look at Norway, the global leader on EV adoption, it's in the quarter range. So maybe a better number for how much charging will be done in public is more like 75 to 80% will be done at home, and the balance will be done at public chargers. And that's important because it means even in cities like Seoul or here in Jeju Island, where you have a lot of detached housing, we still need reliable public charging network to accelerate the growth of electric vehicles. Now, let's take a look at batteries. The chart that you're seeing right now is one of the most remarkable technology stories of the last decade. The price of batteries have fallen by over 90% over the last 10 years. There was an uptick in 2022, and this was when we saw global commodities, including lithium, nickel, and cobalt, spike multiple times in price. But so there were many people saying at that time that this means the energy transition and electric vehicles won't work. But what really happened is with the high prices, more supply came online, and there was more demand substitution. So basically, markets doing what markets do best. And as a result, we saw prices fall by 14% last year, and we think they're going to continue to fall to around $133 per kilowatt hour this year. And it's not just lithium-ion batteries. We're also seeing really interesting progress being made on the next generation of battery technology. So sodium-ion battery, they have lower energy density, but can be made much cheaper than the current generation of lithium-ion batteries. And they don't rely on any of the critical raw materials that we're also concerned about, like lithium, cobalt. And the very first EV using sodium-ion battery just went into production at the end of last year by JSC Motors. Now, if we go beyond road transport and look at the shipping industry, there's also progress being made around electrifying smaller vessels like ferries. So this is an electric ferry that is currently operating in Norway. It takes 200 cars and 600 passengers. It's pretty sizable, and it runs on the busiest ferry route in Norway. And I think the main message from this is that if somebody said, even 10 years ago, that they're going to fully electrify these sizes of vessels, I think people would have laughed, and they would have said batteries are not capable to do that, or it would be way too expensive. And yet, here it is in operation. And it's not just one. Norway has actually already electrified most of their ferry fleet. If we look at aviation, we're seeing many airlines announcing purchasing orders of zero-emission aircrafts using electricity, hydrogen, or a combination of those two. So we've tracked well over 3,000 orders for electric planes so far. Most of those are in the smaller aircraft segments, like regional commuter aircraft, but there's some general aviation there as well. For bigger intercontinental aircraft, we think there's more opportunity in using sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. So I've talked through where we are in the energy transition across the transport sectors, and I want to leave you with two thoughts around how do we get to net zero from where we are today, and what are the opportunities that lie ahead? So the first thought is around the interlinkages across the transport system. At Bloomberg NEF, we've always thought that many of these sectors are far more interlinked than they may seem. And I want to give you an example. So this is the current ethanol demand in the US. So that's a little over 14 billion gallons a year. Now, if you play out a scenario where electric vehicle sales continue to rise and take a growing share of the vehicle fleet in the US, then you're going to get some surplus ethanol that's currently being used, blended into gasoline. Now that surplus ethanol is going to be very valuable in the other parts of the energy transition. So for example, if we were to use that surplus ethanol to produce sustainable aviation fuel, we can meet about 18% of the US jet fuel demand. And this is important because we expect a significant shortage of supply of sustainable aviation fuel in the coming decades. So these are examples of some of the interlinkages that are at play when we talk about decarbonizing transport. And that's why many of you are in the room today. We need all of the different areas of expertise in order to make this transition happen. So that's the first thought around interlinkages. The second one is around the bigger picture. So when we look at the total CO2 emissions by sector, that's how it breaks down. And at BNEF, we do an exercise every year as part of our new energy outlook that looks at what is the different trajectories this could take us over time. And we do this by country, including South Korea. And one of them is our economic transition scenario. So that's the dashed line at the top. And that shows the trajectory that we are currently on if we let economics play itself out without assuming any new policies get implemented. And there's some good news there. You can see the CO2 emissions still coming down a little bit. But there's a long gap to go between that and the net zero scenario. And it's no secret that getting to net zero is going to be very, very difficult. But there's some positive news there as well, which is if you clean up the power sector, which is the blue line over there, you get almost 50% of the way there. And if you electrify road transport, so that's the green line over there, you get another 25% of the way there. So that's a combined 75% just by electrifying road transport and decarbonizing the power sector. And both of those things are things that are very doable over the next 3 decades. And I sincerely hope that this year's GN Forum and the discussions that we'll have over the next 4 days in Jeju would foster some of those sectoral collaborations that I mentioned and help accelerate the energy transition. Thank you very much. 경청해 주셔서 감사합니다.
Thank you, David Kang. 다음은 두 번째 주제로
Next is the second presentation and the future of the EV industry in Korea. The director Kim Joo-hong will be making the presentation. Would you please welcome him with a warm round of applause? Good morning, everyone. I am from the Korea Automobile Mobility Industry Association. My name is Joo-hong Kim. As said, I'm going to talk about the current status of Korean electric vehicle industry and its expansion plan. Let me have a look at the global EV market. As introduced in the previous speaker, this is the forecast. Led by Europe, major countries, they have tighter policies to achieve carbon neutrality, and we have a better EV technologies and better charging stations. So by 2030, the electric vehicle will account for 35% of all the cars, and it's going to increase to 60% by 2035 and further to 75% in 2040. This is the sales of the EV cars last year. As you see, we have exceeded 10 million units sold across the world. But the growth has been slowed down. However, the proportion of electric vehicle in its absolute number has increased. Back in 2021, it has increased dramatically, and as you see here, the growth rate has slowed down in 2022 and 2023. Why? Because we have a early adopters market reaching saturation point and lack of charging infrastructures, and then incentives in major countries have shrunk. All these have led to the slowdown of EV market. And let me tell you the major strategies of the major manufacturers. As you see here, across all the automakers, they have increased their investment in EV very dramatically. However, as you see here, due to the slowdown in the EV sales, Volkswagen and Ford, they have postponed their investment to some extent, and Toyota, they have entered the market much later than other competitors. So it's a strong, it's keep watching what the market will go. This shows you the China's emerging power in EV market. As you see here, the 66.3% is the market share of China, followed by 15% Europe, 11 USA, and 1.6 Korea. As you see here, more than half of the market is dominated by Chinese products of EV. By category, by the category BEV only, Tesla tops the ranking, followed by BYD and Volkswagen and Hyundai Kia. If we include plug-in hybrid, then the ranking is different. As you see here, BYD tops the ranking, and among the top 10 companies, we have 4 Chinese brands. Especially BYD, it was a battery company, but combining IT and EV technologies, they have grown very rapidly. They may outweigh or overgrow Tesla in the future. And the Chinese EV products has penetrated the Korean market. As you see here, Tesla, Polestar, and Volvo, those kind of foreign brands, has entered the Korean market, and its market share has expanded. And Chinese electric vehicle makers, including BYD, announced a plan to invest in the Korean market. What about the electric vehicle market in Korea? Korean market EV has grown or has achieved a double-digit growth, but last year the trend has been reversed. As you see here, we didn't achieve the electric vehicle sales target last year. And as you see here, the subsidy has not been fully used. So compared to the plan of subsidy, less subsidy has been consumed or used last year. What about those vehicles by category? As you see, trucks, the proportion has increased. We have LPG. LPG has replaced some of the demand for the electric vehicle. And as you see here, the Korean EV vehicle has declined, whereas the imported EV has increased. So as for the domestic EV market, it has been shifted from the early adopter market to the mass market. Why the sales have declined? Partly because of the shrink and the level of the subsidy. And then the charging fee. There was a discount of the charging fee in the past, but this kind of charging discount has stopped. That was one of the reasons for the sluggish growth or the reverse growth. So out of 10 EV, many complain of difficulty in having their cars charged. As you see here, more than 47% of the people complain of having difficulty in charging their vehicles. Another issue was the fire, possibility that the electric vehicles catching fire. If your car is parked in the apartment, it's very risky. And as for the electric vehicles, many of them are driven by women, and women are very conscious of the fire. And then depreciation is another issue. As for the electric vehicles, the value has declined quite rapidly over time. So these are the main reasons. And let me have a look at the other countries. What about the subsidies of other countries? As you see, subsidies are not provided on the combustion engine cars anymore, and all the subsidies are on the electric vehicle. But here we have invasion of Chinese EV into Europe and other global market, and there is a collision between the EV and combustion engine cars. That's the reason why many countries have slowed down adopting or implementing the EV-focused policies. In Europe, People 25 CO2 reduction amount has been announced, and they are in the process of reviewing the ban on the combustion cars and Euro 7 compared to Euro 6. The draft version was much tighter, but it has been relaxed to some extent because of the current situation of the EV market. And in the US, the Biden administration, faced by the labor union of automakers, they have relaxed their policies of going to or switching to EV. As you see here, target was 67% of adopting vehicle EV in the future, but it has been cut down to much less than that. As you know, the US adopted IRA, and they provide subsidies to selective manufacturers. And as for France, they collect information of the carbon footprint from the production or source to the consumer's door. And Japan, charging infrastructures and maintenance, and taking them into account, they provide subsidies to the EVs produced in Japan or by Japanese makers. And the subsidy level is quite low. In China, as you see here, the subsidy has promoted the industry of EV. And as for Europe, too much EV vehicles from China are coming in, so they are in the process of investigating in the subsidy provided by the Chinese government. And other countries, India, Thailand, and as for the India, they are attracting investment from the large EV makers, including Tesla and others. What about the subsidy policies in Korea? We have electric vehicle 4.2 million and hydrogen about 300,000 vehicles. This is our goal. So in order to achieve the goal for 2030, we have to increase the number of electric vehicles sold. And what about the subsidy policy for 2024? Starting from last year, electric vehicle subsidy has declined. We have IRA and other policies introduced in other countries. And as you see here, Korea has adopted performance-based subsidy systems or schemes. As you see here, depending on the performance and the price of the vehicle, different subsidies have been provided. And there are incentive subsidies provided for the infrastructures and charging and innovative technologies. So all in all, more than like 10 million won subsidy can be provided. What about the major automotive manufacturer plan for electric vehicle? This is Hyundai Kia plan. They have a plan to sell 3.6 million electric vehicles by 2030. In order to achieve their goal, they have made investment in the facilities. And in the overseas market, they started to build a meta plant in the US and another in Singapore. As for Renault Korea, they have a plan to introduce a new eco-friendly model, at least one model per year. And in the second half of 2025, they are planning to produce a Sweden EV brand, Polestar. And its Busan plant had a plan to switch it to the hybrid Aurora. For that, they made a plan to invest about 700 billion won, but this plan has been somewhat postponed, and we have other plans for GM Korea and KG Mobility. As for the EV, as I said, the market has been sluggish starting from last year. In order to stimulate that, we have adopted some plans and policies, and good initiatives are required to boost the EV market. First and foremost, I believe that we need to expand the subsidies, which has been shrunk over the past years. And then the automotive tax. As for the EV vehicles, there should be no more increase in the tax for EV. As for the non-financial incentives, we should allow the electric vehicles to use the lanes designated for the buses only. That can be a good initiative and should have more charging systems or infrastructures. In line with it, we need to improve the charging infrastructure, and especially the speedy charging facilities need to be expanded. By the year 2030, the number of charging stations, should increase and achieve the target. And in order to achieve that, we need to have an organization designated to implement that plan. And fourth is the incentives. We should have more incentives to boost EV industry. This concludes my presentation, and thank you for listening.
네,
Thank you, Director Kim, for your presentation. Next speaker is Romel Juan, the chairman of the Philippine EV Association. He's going to talk about the ASEAN market and outlook. Please welcome with a big round of applause.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Romel Juan. I'm the chairman of the Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines. And I'm here to introduce AFEVA, the ASEAN Federation of Electric Vehicle Associations. This presentation is actually was supposed to be delivered by our president, Edmond Araga, but unfortunately he is in Indonesia to represent AFEVA also. So please bear with me. To introduce again, AFEVA is the ASEAN Federation of Electric Vehicle Associations, and included in AFEVA is of course EVAP, the Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines, and also EVAM, Electric Vehicle Association of Malaysia, here represented by our friend Dennis. Where's Dennis? Oh, there. He's taking a call. Anyway, and also EVAT, Electric Vehicle Association of Thailand, and EVAS, Electric Vehicle Association of Singapore, and Periklindo, which is the Electric Vehicle Association of Indonesia. Just to share with you, also Laos has joined. We are talking to Cambodia and Brunei, and also Vietnam will be joining soon. So, for the AFEVA, our mission is to promote electric vehicle adaptation and catalyze the development and harmonization of standards within the region. We envision it to be an integral part in the making the industry viable in the region through the sharing, promotion, facilitation of best practices, R&D, and networking. I just wanted to share that when we formed EVAP, the first time we agreed was in 2017, and this was through the inspiration of our Chairman Kim of Guian. As you can see, our picture over there in 2017 was during the first ASEAN Electric and Hybrid Vehicle Summit in the Philippines. So at that time, we were ASEAN +1 because Korea was represented by Chairman Kim. Our MOU was signed in 2019, and we were registered as a federation in 2020. Our key elements, cooperation on the promotion of harmonized electric vehicle standards and technologies, networking within the region, and that's why we are here, sharing best practices and other relevant information regarding the industry, extension of support, and facilitating student exchange programs. The first AFEVA Summit Policy Dialogue took place in October 2022 in the Philippines during our Electric Vehicle Summit. During the 11th EV Summit, also, we sponsored a panel discussion on the ASEAN perspective on regulation of EVs. So we gathered some information from our member associations, and here are some ASEAN vehicle facts and trends. So this chart shows total vehicles in the ASEAN region. This includes passenger cars, commercial vehicles, and motorcycles. No? So as you can see, altogether, Indonesia has about 7 million. Malaysia has about 1 million. This includes cars and motorcycles. Philippines, about 2 million. Singapore, about maybe 300, 400. Thailand, about 3 million also. In Vietnam, about 4 million. So there's a disparity, of course, because of the population size. Car ownership ratio in the ASEAN has a wide disparity. CVs and MCs, commercial vehicles and motorcycle sales are expected to rebound faster due to increasing e-commerce. So so it will increase because of in the future. So the EV statistics also, Thailand in 2023 had sold about 14,500 battery electric vehicles, 13% of total sales volume. They have about DC CCS2 chargers, about 4,000, DC CHAdeMO about 360, AC Type 2 about 5,000. In the Philippines, 2023, we sold about 10,215 electric vehicles, mostly e-trikes. We have a lot of public transport in the Philippines, LEV and some e-jeepneys. As you might know, jeepneys are our main mode of public transport in the Philippines. So we have electric vehicle charging station providers. We have 27. We have suppliers of 15 and provider services of 17. In Singapore, they had 1,400 BEVs sold in 2023. And in Malaysia, I just got this correction from Dennis last night. In 2023, they sold about 13,257 passenger cars and 2,030 electric motorcycles, and about 2,600 chargers, 450 of which are DC chargers. So the EV adoption trends. Thailand has, of course, increasing battery electric vehicle share. They have about 76,366 battery electric vehicles combined. The Philippines, for 2023, there were 1,357 sold. In Singapore, they had about 1,410 full electric vehicles sold. And for Thailand, for the EV adoption targets, their target is to reach 440,000 units or 50% BEV, FCEV by 2030, or 2,050,000 units. And for Singapore, one of their targets is to completely phase out ICE vehicles by 2040. So 100% EV sales by 2031. In the Philippines, in a clean energy scenario, our long-term plan is to have about 2 million electric vehicles in the whole country. There's an increasing variety of EVs in the ASEAN market, of course, largely dominated by Chinese brands. Last year, we had our largest EV summit in the Philippines. And by the way, I'd like to invite everybody to come this year. We're going to have it in October 24 to 27. And it's going to be larger still. So as you can see, we have, last year they introduced the Lotus Eletre, the Hongqi HS9, the BYD Atto, the Photon Tornado, Eclimo e-trike, Hatatsu e-trike, Jetour ice cream, and the Tojo FLEV. In Singapore, of course, there's various brands also: Tesla, BYD, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, MG, Porsche, Audi, Polestar, and Volvo. In Thailand, well, you have BYD, of course, all the brands also. As you can see in this chart, BYD, all the models, Neta, Tesla, and BMW. For the charging infrastructure targets, Singapore, their target is about 60,000 chargers by 2030. In Thailand, about 7,000 charging stations in coming years. EVs to make up to 50% of all car production by 2030, and only EVs to be sold from 2035. In Malaysia, the blueprint reportedly calls for, and this is a correction, it's about 10,000 AC chargers and 1,000 of which are DC. In Indonesia, 2,400 public charging stations by 2025 and 31,000 by 2030. In the Philippines, this is an old target, 200 charging stations in 2022. So the EV charging infrastructure, in Malaysia, interministerial coordination and collaboration from all stakeholders are required to eliminate stumbling blocks in the installation of targeted 10,000 charging points by 2025. So right now, actually, they already have 2,600 by March 2024, and 450 of which are DC. Right, Dennis? Okay, thank you. He told me while we were drinking beer last night. And for Singapore, they have 5 major companies that put charging stations. That's Charge Plus, CDGE, Shell, eMOBILITY, and Strides. So that's their plan on how to divide Singapore. Wait, I didn't show that. Okay, that's Singapore. No. And then for charging infrastructure targets, Thailand is targeting to reach a charger density of 0.5 units per kilometer square. It will be by around 2030 based on the government's target value. Please don't ask me to explain. I'm not an engineer, but that's also their target is to match Sweden, Sweden's charging stations. And consumer views, of course, the preferred powertrain for the next vehicle is still dominated by ICE, but of course, EVs are catching up. The key factors that will facilitate e-car adoption is better safety standards, ability to charge at work, charging point at home, option to fast charge, government incentives, and of course, cost to charge EV is less. EV manufacturing in the ASEAN, we're seeing a lot of investment now. NETA, BEV assembly plant, will be constructing by 2024 in Thailand. Also GWM, BYD, MG, Chang'an, and GAC. For the industry incentives, we have standard incentives. For Thailand, 3-year corporate tax holiday, 8-year corporate tax holiday for BEVs, extendable for R&D investment and expenditures. The incentives depend on the value of the investment. In the Philippines, we're working right now for the EV to be part of the Strategic Investment Priority Plan, and 4 to 7 years of income tax holiday, as low as 5% corporate tax, enhanced deductions, and special corporate tax deductions. Malaysia also has 5 years income tax holiday on EV and charging equipment manufacturing, investment tax allowance over 5 years, import duty and excise duty exemption until end of 2025. Indonesia, similar incentives, 5 to 20 years income tax holiday, income tax deduction also. So again, of course, the development of the EV will largely still depends on incentives given by the government. So I won't go into much in detail, the other incentives. Okay. And for the type approval regulations, as you can see, our governments are ready for BEVs, and the regulations are shown there. So policy directions, mostly focused on manufacturing incentives Consumer side incentives are mostly limited to purchase tax exemption or reductions. Particularly for Thailand, EV3 and EV3.5 package to provide subsidy for up to 150,000 baht for BEV excise tax duty deductions from 2 to 8% and import duty reductions. Increasing willingness to support public transport, EV adoption, and strong efforts toward adoption and implementation of EV homologation regulations. So again, I'd like to thank you in behalf of the AFIVA, EVAP, EVAT, EVAM, EVAS, and Periclindo. And congratulations again to Gian and eMOBILITY this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, Chairman. Next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Amit Kumar, the Indonesian Ambassador to Korea. 다음 발표하실 분은 주한 인도 대사
From Indian Embassy to Korea, and Amit Kua will be talking about the growing e-mobility sector in India. Thank you.
Mr. Kim Dae-hwan, Chairman of the Expo Committee, Mr. Moon Kook-hyun, Co-Chairman, members of the organizing committee, business representatives from the electric vehicle community, my colleague from Denmark, friends, I'm delighted to join you all at this 9th Gene Forum today. And thank you for bringing together relevant stakeholders to discuss the EV industry trends and exchange views on emerging opportunities. I'm here, of course, to talk about India. Our government attaches great importance to the development of the electric mobility sector as part of our energy transition plans to switch to less energy intensive options, with other focus areas being solar energy and green hydrogen in the coming decade. The electric mobility sector is a relatively new sector for us, with our first policy framework coming out a decade ago. And it was called the Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Electric Vehicles, or FAME. We witnessed disruption due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but the sector has since picked up pace. Now, the Indian automotive industry is growing rapidly. It is already the world's third largest automotive market after the US and China. So passenger car sales in India are around 4.1 million units. However, the four-wheeler electric vehicles accounted only for 2.2% of the Indian market, with around 96,000 units sold in 2023. At the same time, this statistics does not capture the full picture. If you look at the two-wheeler segment and the three-wheeler segment, we see that more than 1 million two-wheeler units were sold in India last year. We also had sales of around 500,000 three-wheelers in the electric vehicle segment. We are already the second largest two-wheeler electric vehicles market in the world, and the largest when it comes to the three-wheeler segment. So it is perhaps okay to characterize the electric vehicle segment in India as being in a relatively nascent stage. But I would argue that, therefore, there is also enormous untapped potential in India, particularly at a time when the Indian economy is growing fast. We are a $3.4 trillion economy. We are projected to grow at 6% for the next 3 years and expected to pick up further momentum thereafter. The Indian EV market is therefore at an inflection point. David had talked about slowing rate of growth when it comes to the global EV sales. But in India, the EV market grew 90% year on year between 2022 and 2023. We expect the EV's penetration in India to reach 40% by 2030, driven by target adoption of over 35% each in both two-wheelers and the three-wheelers segment. And the government has come up with a revised EV policy framework last month. And it comprises a series of measures, including upfront reduced purchase prices for buyers, with OEMs being reimbursed by the government. We've instituted a number of production-linked incentive schemes for EVs and ACC's manufacturing, reduction of taxes on purchase of EVs, and so on. So the production-linked scheme for automotive sector is worth $3 billion, where we expect automakers to invest a minimum of $500 million in 3 years to establish local EV manufacturing facilities with 25% localization level to be achieved by 3rd year and 50% by the 5th year. In terms of tax breaks, it will amount to around $500 million over a period of 5 years. The objective is to stimulate both job growth and promote technological innovation in the Indian EV sector, supporting indigenous manufacturing ecosystems. The government has also launched a production-linked incentive scheme for the advanced chemistry cell worth $2.25 billion to help facilitate establishment of a competitive battery manufacturing ecosystem for a size of 50 gigawatt hours. Additionally, 5 gigawatt hours of niche ACC technologies is also covered under this scheme, and proposals worth 30 gigawatt hours have been approved by the government. In terms of the tax structure in India, we have a general goods and services tax, which is divided into 4 slabs: 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. And to encourage the EV sector, the GST on EVs has been reduced from 12 to 5%. Similarly, GST on chargers and charging stations has been reduced from 18 to 5%. And I expect the government would probably follow the same for the batteries in the next budget. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has advised states to waive road taxes on electric vehicle registration to help with the reduction in initial cost of EVs. So what are the future trends that one expects in the Indian market? As I mentioned, we expect EVs to potentially account for more than 40% of our automotive market, generating over $100 billion of revenue by 2030. There's no slide, so I'm just making these points which I had jotted down yesterday. So as in other markets, one big concern is for the potential customers is the price differential between a conventional internal combustion engine vehicle and the electric vehicle in the same product category. And what we have seen in India is that with government support, there has been price rationalization of EVs in the two-wheeler segment based on what we call the total cost of ownership, or TCO. And with the revised policy framework that came out last month, we expect a similar price rationalization will eventually happen in the three-wheeler and four-wheeler segment. The other important aspect in India is that today we have around 1,000 startups in India which cover the entire spectrum of EV ecosystem from manufacturing, batteries, energy storage, and charging infrastructure. They're driving innovation, they're leading to new business models, and help reduce costs. Another trend that we are seeing in India is that the original equipment manufacturers are tying with e-commerce platforms particularly, basically targeting B2B customers in food supplies, in grocery platforms or logistic firms, or taxi fleet operators. So all companies like Amazon India or Uber India, as part of their initiatives to have greener adoption, are looking at buying large large number of electric vehicles to support their operations. One big challenge that we will face is in terms of scaling up our charging infrastructure. The number of EVs that can be supported per charging point in India is significantly higher when compared to the US, and much more when compared to China. We also need to widen coverage, particularly on the highways, to reduce range anxiety. So in India, we are seeing two models emerging. One, which is the OEMs and the big companies on the e-commerce platform joining hands to promote charging infrastructure. But the government is also encouraging smaller players to set up charging infrastructure by making it the regulatory compliance burden to be much less for them, and to encourage scaling up of infrastructure, charging infrastructure. Another important policy initiative which is expected later this year is a policy on battery swapping. We believe that given our circumstances in India, battery swapping will allow, I think, last mile delivery. It is important for the logistics sector. It will help promote adoption of two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and particularly in dense urban zones where setting up charging infrastructure may not be the easiest. So that is what we are trying to do. We are hoping to learn from partners in other countries. For example, Gogoro, a Taiwanese company, also present in India in the two-wheeler segment, has developed a very efficient network of battery swapping facilities in Taiwan. Now, what I'll do is I'll quickly talk a little about the bilateral cooperation with South Korea that we are seeing in the electric vehicle segment. The Hyundai Motor Group has announced ambitious plans. Their executive chair, Mr. Chung, was in India last week, where he talked about his ambition of making Hyundai Motor Group not only a leader in conventional mobility, but also in terms of electric mobility and in green hydrogen mobility in the coming decade. They have announced an investment of 2.45 billion to look at EVs, secondary batteries, and charging infrastructure. They already have automobile facilities in Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra, and they are, I think, repurposing some of those facilities to start building electric vehicles, first of which will be introduced next year. And they hope I think they plan to introduce 6 new models by 2030. And while on this subject, I just wanted to mention that they have also announced a green hydrogen mobility resource center in India at a cost of $800 million. It signed a strategic cooperation agreement with Exide Energy, which is a leading battery company in India, to supply made in India lithium iron phosphate batteries for EVs to be manufactured by Hyundai Motors and Kia Motors locally. And lastly, the LG Energy Solutions is already the biggest supplier of battery cells to electric two-wheelers in India. And as we understand, they are reportedly in discussions with partners in India to set up a battery manufacturing facility there. Now, to conclude, I would, just one second. I just wanted to show this map to show where the electric vehicle mobility is gaining speed in India. We are a very large country. So as we see from the southwest, southern part, western part, we are seeing adoption. And this is where bulk of the action is going to take place. And hopefully, this will encourage other states in India to follow the lead. These are some of the names of some of the companies which are present in India. At the moment, most of the companies present in terms of market share are actually domestic companies, but there's growing interest, as I said, from Hyundai Motor Group, from LG Chem, from VinFast, from Vietnam, and a few other foreign OEMs, including Tesla. To conclude, I would just say that the EV segment in India, I believe, is at a takeoff stage with supportive government regulations and several EV companies and startups driving growth and expansion as well as innovation. So we are in the midst of a very dynamic EV segment. And I think foreign businesses will find ample opportunities in this sector, and may I add, will probably enjoy the first mover advantage in many ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency Ambassador Amit Kumar. Next speaker is the Deputy Head of the Mission of Denmark, Ms. Sabrina Mierson Meinecke. 다음 발표자는 덴마크 부.
Next speaker is the Deputy Head of the Embassy, Sabrina Melassen Melake, and she's going to talk about the EV market development and outlook of the Danish country. Please welcome with a big round of applause.
안녕하세요, Chairman, Ambassador of India to Korea, esteemed speakers and dear participants. Very grateful to be invited here today to what I believe is the 9th Global EV Association Network Forum. This is my first time in Jeju, but I can say already it will not be my last. And I'm also happy to hear that there was a Danish company among some of the nominated. So that's very nice, and of course, congratulations to the winners. It's a very cool prize. So these are some of the topics I will cover today, starting with a quick glimpse of our two countries, especially also because I know that Denmark is much less known than India, so I think a little introduction is needed. Sorry about that. So as you can see, Denmark is, of course, very modest in size. It's, I think, just less than 10 times more than Jeju when it comes to inhabitants. I'm going to move this. And then only a bit more than 4 times the size of Jeju. I'm sharing this not least so we can also see what we have in common, and that is a lot of coastline. And a lot of coastline is very favorable when it's a favorable natural condition for offshore wind energy, which Denmark has great experience in. Another thing we have in common is high ambitions on renewable energy and carbon neutrality, which I will give a little bit more details into. So Denmark and Korea have had bilateral relations since the Korean War, but it really kicked off in 2011 with our Green Growth Alliance. We also refer to it as the DTA. It includes, among other things, collaboration on sustainability and green transition, and it includes exchanging experiences and policies also on e-mobilities. Today, the DDA, or the Green Growth Alliance, is a cornerstone of our bilateral relations, and it includes that our ministers or at a higher level meet on an annual basis to exchange experiences and policies. So then, sorry about that. So Denmark focuses on certain specialized industries such as wind energy. We are not a car-producing country, but we are in fact a electric vehicle consuming countries to a greater extent. But we do not, as you may already be aware, we do not produce our own electric vehicles. This strong interest in electric vehicles is not least due to great environmental awareness and political support for green initiative. And of course, a commitment to sustainability and green transition. I think think there was a slide between. Yeah, so I think these figures speak for themselves. 36% of all new cars purchased in Denmark were EVs last year, and it is expected to be bigger. 775,000 is probably doesn't sound a lot for many people, but you have to remember that it's a small country. We are less than 6 million in totals, and of course a lot of people do not actually have cars, as we often use bike as our primary mean of transportation. So this is in fact a great number. I purchased my own EV back in 19, which was possible not least due to some lower taxes on EVs, something I will, that leads me to my next slides, which is on government incentives. As also highlighted by some of the previous speakers, European governments and governments in general have, including Denmark, has introduced some favorable measures, making it more attractive for consumers to adopt and get an EV. Not least when it comes to taxes. In Denmark, we have some of the world's highest taxes on private cars. These have been significantly reduced for EVs. I think it was a very interesting comment made also by previous speakers on how the proposal or the suggestion to make EVs use the bus lane. In Denmark, which is my capital, in Copenhagen, my capital, we had free parking until January this year. So for just short of 10 years, we had free parking in Copenhagen, which of course also made it very attractive for city dwellers to have EVs compared to conventional cars. As in many European cities, parking is of course also a big issue. One of the things I could highlight that despite positive developments in adoption to EV is that the Danish market still lacks a significant presence of truly budget-friendly electric car models, which could limit adoption among more cost-sensitive buyers. So this is for the industry to, and also of course to my government. And then, of course, I should mention for e-mobility to be also green mobility, it will require, of course, green power. Denmark's high percentage of renewable energy, especially from wind, ensures that electricity used to charge the e-vehicles is largely green, contributing to a more sustainable and eco-friendly transportation system in general. As mentioned, we have a relatively high percentage of renewables in our energy mix, but it has not always been like that. The transition started back in 1970 with the oil crisis as a wake-up call, and then in 2010 we introduced our net zero vision for 2050, which I understand in Jeju is for 2030, so that's another even more impressive. In the 2010s, that's also when we started to consider waste as a resource, which also explains why biogas is a huge part of our energy mix today, along with wind energy. I think this one also largely speaks to itself, but yeah. I mentioned that that we have an energy mix that highly consists of wind electricity, and then bioenergy, and to some degree also solar power. This is not least to mention that green business is also a good business. And then I would like to highlight that you can grow economically, but at the same time reduce your energy consumption, and that's not least due to companies like Danfoss, that was mentioned earlier. So energy efficiency is of course, the most green energy is the energy you don't use. I know I'm short of time, so this is also just to showcase one of the good businesses that we have had. One is a port in Copenhagen that have managed to go from oil and gas to now being heavily reliant on wind energy, and that has also showcased the employment opportunities with the green transition. Is our Prime Minister in the middle. So I think I mentioned this already a number of times. We are a small country. That's also why we need to work together, not least with our strategic partners such as Korea and India for that matter. And also increasingly on a regional level, where Jeju is one of our major partners, along with Lanamdo and of course Seoul metropolitan area and Ulsan and so on. So I think the fact that we are invited here today is a good example of just that. I think this is it for me today. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Deputy Head of Mission of Denmark. And next and the last speaker is that Mr. Frank Steinleitner, the chairman of the planning, the subcommittee of Chin. 다음 발표하실 분은 프랭크 스타인라이트너 기획분과위원장님으로서 말레이시아의
I'd like to invite Mr. Frank to the stage. He's going to talk about the EV market in Malaysia in cooperation with Korea.
Annyeonghaseyo, and a very good morning to you all. I'm very happy to be back here in Jeju. Thank you, Chairman Kim, Excellencies, and friends of EV. As you can see, a German talking about Malaysia. Since 1999, actually, I lived in Malaysia. And I follow the automotive industry since 100 years, roughly. I started my career in Mercedes-Benz in Stuttgart, Germany. And Stuttgart is known as Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, but also Bosch and other companies who are globally well known. Malaysia capital, 2 million people. Seoul has 10 million, with the surroundings 20 million, so also very small, similar to Denmark in a way. Plus, please come and visit, interesting country. Some key data. We have 34 million people population, employed half of it, roughly 16.5 million. Unemployment rate relatively low with 3.3%, and as you can see on the chart on the left, it has been decreasing over the last 1.5 years. Our GDP is predicted for 2024 between 4 and 5%, according to Bank Negara, and the first quarter in 2024 was 3.9%, a little bit lower than predicted, but hopefully this will be nivellated over the next months and quarters to come. Exports, mainly semiconductor. Actually, Malaysia is number 6 semiconductor producer in the world. Electronic products, palm oil, and everyone since Formula 1 race is going on in Malaysia knows Petronas. So oil and oil-related products, gas-related products are one of the most important income. I think Petronas is standing for 9 to 10% of the GDP of Malaysia. Yeah. So very important, and logically, when you produce oil, do you really want to introduce EV in Malaysia? So a little bit of question mark and contradiction in itself, but I come to that a little bit later. Of course, we do chemicals, machinery, a lot of industry producing in Malaysia. Service sector also very important. About 40 to 50% of GDP is related to service sector. The rest, like 40%, is manufacturing industry. We have metal and rubber products, but we are also known for palm oil and rubber products in terms of exports. The automotive industry in Malaysia started, I think Malaysia's independence was 1963. 1964, Malaysian government decided to have a focus on assembly, because with assembly you create factories, you create staff to work, employment for people. So at the time, you can see on the left side, 20,000 units of cars were sold in Malaysia. It grew then to 100,000 in 1985. 100,000 vehicles have been sold at the time. And that was the time when the Prime Minister today, Tun Mahathir Mohamad, 98 years old at the moment, decided we need to have a national car. That was like the dream of the country, to have our own car, very cheap, sedan car, 4 doors, everyone can drive. So Proton was started as the first national car in 1985, followed by the second national car when the market grew to 200,000 cars, which was Perodua, with 200,000 units at the time sales. And of course, there were other brands, but they all had to do CKD production. That means completely knocked down. The cars arrive, as you can see. This is the example of Volkswagen Beetle, all dismantled, and you have to assemble it in the country in order to create employment. And of course, by having national car, you also want to acquire technologies. It leads now to last year's sales volume of roughly 800,000 cars. And you can see on the right side, the blue dots are where assembly factories are located in Malaysia. It's mainly on the west coast, Indian Ocean side, because there are all the ports and the ships arriving. The picture on the right is Porsche, who joined the assembly 2 years ago, and last year they sold 1,500 plus cars. This is just a picture of after 1 year, okay? So, national car. Proton is the first national car, started on 9th July 1985 with a Mitsubishi technology. Now, of course, the car looks more modern, more special, more design, and more European design also in a way. And you can see the price, $7,500 US. The entry model of Proton is even lower, like 1,000 US dollar lower. But as you can see, I don't think we have a car in Korea which you can buy for 7,500 US dollar. So it is very much designed to the people of Malaysia. Yeah? At the time when the car was developed, and in the meantime we have 8 different car models on sale for Proton, and totaling 150,000 cars last year with a market share of roughly 20%. Geely joined as a technology provider. They have 49.9%. You see the 49.9. It means there's for sure a technical arrangement that they have the say on what is in future, what kind of technology, what kind of cars are going to be launched in Malaysia. But officially, Proton is still a Malaysian car and still owned by Malaysia. So they started in 2017. They introduced several EV SUV models. And in end of 2025, we will have their own first EV car here in Malaysia. Second national car, Perodua. Started also as a 4-door, like people mover car with Daihatsu technology, which is Toyota technology. You look at the right side, Peroda Beza is the best-selling model with 56,000 units. But you look at the price, what one national car is doing, the other one is also doing. So $7,500, also with lower entry model. They also have 8 different car models on sale, totaling 330,000. That means the second national car sells double as much as the first national car, with a market share of 41%. And they also, end of 2025, will bring their own EV model to the market. When you look at the total sales numbers, passenger car and commercial vehicle on the left side, you can see sales and production is more or less the same number, and it peaked in 2023 due to certain incentives the government has been giving, not for EV cars only, in general has given incentive in order to encourage automotive industry. When you look on the right side, this is two-wheeler segment motorbikes. We also have a national motorbike called Modenas. The volume is around 400,000, 500,000. So passenger car and commercial vehicle is on the higher side. The sources I put below the charts because I think it's an issue in general in ASEAN. Depending which website you look, depending which agency you ask, you always have a different figure. But the tendency is definitely right. Looking in a little bit more detail, on the left side, passenger car and commercial vehicle. Commercial vehicle, 80,000 units. Passenger car, 719,000 units. But actually, the two national car producers, Proton and Peroda, they make 67%. So logically, in a market where you have two dominant brands in terms of volume, when they don't have EV, it will be very difficult to establish EV in a market. And when you look to the right, the top 5 brands include Japanese brands Honda, Toyota, and Mazda. 91% are the 5 brands. So all the rest, there are another 40 brands in the market, they all have very small volume. So very difficult for them to actually compete in this kind of environment on the passenger car side. You can see market entry of the first 2 Chinese brands, Chery and BYD. Chery not EV yet, but BYD partly EV. So they joined last year and they could manage 3,000 or 4,000 units of sales annually. Hyundai 1,500 and Kia just 30, but 30 are all BEV cars. They're not combustion engine cars, so they just started their BEV sales. And Tesla also started end of 2023, so there are no market figures yet, but they started in November, so there are only a few units altogether. Looking to the right, I mean, there is also Mercedes and BMW and Audi and Volkswagen. But this is 8,000, 9,000 units. Volkswagen sells 2,000 units. To have an assembly plant and manage it profitably with 2,000 units is nearly impossible. You look to the right side. EV started in Malaysia 2023, where the first hybrids car came on board. So this is not the sales volume of last year. This is the total vehicle in the market in Malaysia combined over the last 2.5 years. So we have about 60,000 hybrid cars, 13,257 BEV cars. Last year, about 10,000 units have been sold. It was mentioned earlier. So altogether, we call it XEV, about 70,000 cars on the road, EV cars on the road, 1,500 AC chargers and 400 DC chargers. Gives you a bit a ratio of 1:8. I don't know if ratios are so important, but the message what I want to send here is the top 5 will decide when the introduction of EV really takes place. because on the right side, the BEV, the small BEV numbers is because of Mercedes-Benz or BMW or other brands who come into the market with EV. But charging infrastructure is, of course, very important. If the big fives are not starting with it, there will be no charging infrastructure or very little charging infrastructure. We are very good in Malaysia to design policies and set targets. The implementation is maybe not always follow the target or the policy lines, but there are, of course, the commitments in order to reduce carbon emissions. We committed to 2050 is also very clear, but what is more important is the two sides here. 20% of EVs by 2030 from the total industry volume. This means about 150,000 EV cars to be in 2030 in Malaysia. This is quite tough. And of course, when you look on the right side, 9,000 AC chargers and 1,000 DC chargers is also for 2025 not realistic. But when Proton and Porodo are the two national cars, end of the year will start, definitely charging infrastructure will increase rapidly. So we have a target, and we have policies, lots of policies. You cannot imagine who is involved in EV in Malaysia. You think you are in Europe or in US or wherever. We have a national automotive policy. We have a low carbon mobility policy. We have a national transport policy, a national energy policy, blueprints all over the place. And this somehow needs to be combined in a way in order that everyone talks the same language. Yeah? So we streamline strategies and initiatives involving not only policies, government policies, but also energy infrastructure, etc. Not an easy task. You look at the national automotive policy, we have certain phases and fixed what we are going to include in which year and what focus we are going to have. But when we talk about we, I mean the national cars, because they dictate more or less what is going to happen in Malaysia and what you need to comply accordingly. So I'm not going through all the stages and the different systems, but we are very much focused in keeping national cars and developing it further. Stakeholders, as I already mentioned, many on the government side, which you can see less, policies and initiatives, we have plenty. Infrastructure, a lot of companies are involved in order to set up EV charging stations. We also, logically, the manufacturers are involved in a way. You see some Korean companies, of course, with Samsung SDI and SK, who invested in Malaysia to set up factories in order to support battery, but it is more or less 100% export because Malaysia is known for manufacturing good quality products. So a lot of these companies, they export mainly, is not 100% for the local market. Of course, it involves as well education and regulatory agency with the standards and so on. Gabriela, we have a lot of standards also and a lot of drafted standards. Yeah. Supply chain, you can see it is very scattered on the peninsula Malaysia on the left side, and we have all the known companies, in particular for semiconductor industry in Malaysia, and we give a lot of incentives also accordingly. So this is just as mentioned earlier by Rommel, the colleague from Philippines. We have pioneer status, we have investment tax allowance. You cannot imagine how many incentives you need to study this all very carefully because there are always footnotes which you need to read and you need to apply to a government task force in order to get this. But I listed it down also. We don't need to go through this, but there are many tax incentives, not only for the user of EV, but also for on the manufacturing side. I also took the liberty to show and compare the incentives given by other countries and the tax holidays. I mean, the sole purpose of this chart is to say Malaysia is the greatest. We give everything. So please come to Malaysia and consider to produce in Malaysia. Last but not least, these are the two possible EV cars which Proton and Baroda might produce end of 2025. Kamsahamnida, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank Steinleitner. Before closing, I will give you two very important notice. 이게 중요한 거기 때문에 제가 영어하고 한국어로 동시에 하겠습니다. The first one is the luncheon introduction. The luncheon, the invitee who are for the luncheon to the Seogwipo mayor at 12 o'clock, and then in the corner of this floor on the Delizia, on the upper level. Then please join us at 12 o'clock. 오늘 서귀포시장 초청 오천에 참가하신 분들께서는 12시에 3층 같은 층 코너에 있는 식당 델리지아 위층에 12시까지 참가해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 마지막으로 기념 촬영을 하시겠습니다. 모두 참가하신 분들께서는 앞 단상으로 참가해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. As I commemorate the would you please join all of you on the stage? Thank you very much.
11시인데 끝난 거야, 지금?
앉아 계신 분들 Professor Ju Chen. Thank you all to participate in today's forum. Thank you very much.